Hello and welcome to In Business Talks 2. We are excited to welcome you to our bonus episode, The Friday Fix, episode 25. We are your hosts, Tracy and Ian Earle, founders of In Business, a networking and business support community. And together,
we are In Business. On our Friday Fixes, we'll be discussing a business-related subject with either one of our wonderful In Business networking members or a fellow business owner who'll be sharing their advice, thoughts or knowledge on a particular topic. This week we have Andrew Armitage, who is the founder of an award-winning digital agency called A Digital, and he's the author of an Amazon #1 best-selling book called Holistic Website Planning. Oh, and make sure you listen to the end of the show to hear our guests tell us about their favourite networking tip. Right, I'd like to welcome you to our Friday Fix today. We have Andrew Armitage, who is the founder of an award-winning digital agency called A Digital, and he's also the author of the Amazon #1 best-selling book, Holistic Website Planning. So welcome, Andrew.
Welcome, Andrew. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's okay.
So just before we start, would you like to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So I set up a digital agency. We're based just on the edge of the Lake District, and it's called A Digital. And we're a team of 6 people that build websites and support companies with their digital marketing. So content management systems, Google Ads, paid search, all those sorts of things. That's the sort of thing that we get involved with and help our clients to succeed with.
Right, excellent. Okay, so we'll start with we'll test you now. So, sorry, I ad-libbed. I shouldn't ad-lib.
Shut up. He's wittering.
I'm wittering, yeah. So, how important is it then to have a high-performing website, in your opinion?
Well, I think over the last 12 months, if not a little bit longer, through the pandemic, we've all seen our habits shift online a little bit more. And whether we're watching Netflix or whether we're going online and doing a Tesco shop, we don't want to see pages buffering. We don't want to see white screens. We don't want to see things that take time to load in. So, I think we've all learned that time has become more precious to us, and we don't want to have to be hanging around waiting for websites to load when really we just want to get a job done in most cases. So I believe it's really important. I believe that performance is the new loyalty, really, when it comes to websites. And you're naturally going to be drawn towards websites, or not just websites, but software applications, the software as a service applications like your cloud accounting and things like that. You're going to be naturally drawn to use those services more if they perform well. So if you're not left hanging around waiting for things to load, they load reliably, they load promptly, then you're going to make use of those services far more frequently. So in my view, it's absolutely essential. And not only that, but search engines think it's essential as well. So search engines are obviously always on the lookout for providing valuable links and references, resources through to people based on what you've searched on. And they equally want to make sure that they're referring people through to a good experience. And one of the things they can measure very well, of course, is content, but increasingly they can measure performance as well. So it's a really important aspect from a general user experience point of view, but there are fringe benefits through things like better rankings in your search engine positions that really make performance something that everybody should at least have an awareness of.
And do you think that over the last 18 months, because of what we've gone through, and there are a lot more people, if you like, using online, going onto websites, buying things and everything else, do you think that all that traffic has increased? So it's more important now than ever to make sure you got a high performing website?
Yeah, it is. I mean, as we said, more people have switched online because whether they're doing click and collect, whether they're doing their supermarket shop, they may never have done a supermarket shop online, but all of a sudden, either because of their personal circumstances or just because they were doing more online anyway, it became more convenient. Yeah, we've seen a huge shift to people embracing e-commerce in particular. So yeah, I mean, if you're doing a Tesco shop for your family shop for the week, then there might be 150 items in that shop. And if you've got to wait for the pictures to load in or things like that, then you're soon going to find it takes a long time to do that shop. And of course, Tesco shop or something like that is just one example. You might just be buying one pair of shoes, but nonetheless, you're going to be spending that time browsing through the website, perhaps comparing with different products. And if the pages are slow to load, then it makes that whole process just much more convoluted, and it's slower, a bit more painful.
About the whole user experience, isn't it? I mean, I remember years ago when they first started doing online shopping, I was doing an Asda shop and I loaded my trolley with all this stuff. And then it just went. And the whole basket emptied. And I just was so frustrated. I mean, obviously things have improved a lot more since then, but it's that frustration of the customer if it's not easy. Everything needs to be easy, doesn't it, for people?
That's it. And the worst point that you can have poor performance is around the checkout. And that crucial stage that everybody has to go through. They've got to the stage where they've decided on the product combination or the size, the color, whatever it might be. And they've got one more thing to do, and that's checkout. And if you've got a slow checkout process, you then start to have this doubt, is the site working as well as it should do? Will the order go through? And if you have those pauses around the payment processing, then you're into real dicey area really as an e-commerce or as a shop owner, because customers are left wondering, well, has that order gone through?
Yeah.
Am I going to be charged once? What do I do if I refresh the page? Some sites tell me not to refresh the page, but it's stopped. So do I refresh the page and risk being charged twice and then have to go through all of that process again? So having a nice, clean, fast and efficient loading website is really important from all aspects, particularly with e-commerce, where you've got that critical step having to make a payment.
Yeah, and you said it's vital as well from a Google point of view, from your rankings as well. How does it help in that respect?
Yeah, so like a lot of things with Google, they are ultimately looking to try and find sites that have a good visitor experience. Now, over the years, we've seen that been applied with content. The general guidance with search engine optimization is not to write robotic content where you're constantly stuffing the keywords that you think you want your site to get found for into this really robotic section of text. But equally, they're wanting this to apply to performance now. And it was about June time this year. It was actually due to roll out last year, but they deferred it because of the pandemic. But they've put together this new suite of metrics called Core Web Vitals. And this is a collection of measures that Google can apply to every website. And essentially, they are scoring your performance on how fast your page loads, how efficiently the page loads, how stable the layouts are, and things like that. And we don't know because Google keep their cards close to their chest, but these things are inevitably going to have a bearing on your overall rankings. Now, just because they've started rolling this out now, we wouldn't expect to see rankings suddenly drop. But as you go forwards and as obviously different companies improve performance on their own sites, you're going to start and see a little bit more variation. And those companies that are putting effort into improving performance will start and outrank those that don't. So it's not like you're just suddenly going to drop rankings overnight, but going forward, these new metrics are going to be much more valuable, and they will influence just to what extent, we don't know. Things like content will still be important. Links will still be really important, and page authority, but performance is going to be an increasingly important area of how they rank your site.
And do you think that's a good thing that they're doing this? Do you think it's a good that they're looking at this metric now?
It is. I mean, if you imagine a site that was stuffed with keywords back in the day, and you've ended up on that site purely because it was stuffed with the keywords that you've searched for, but it didn't actually answer your question, then there's an element of frustration that creeps in. So you're back through the way you came in, using the back button most likely, and you carry on your search. So that in itself becomes frustrating, and it takes time. So really, Google's an advertiser. That's where they make their revenue. That's where they get their money. So if their interest is in making sure that they are directing you to a site that is relevant for what you've typed in to search for, and that is all various different elements of the overall experience. It's the content experience, but it's also the performance experience. They want you to get the result that you want in a quick and efficient manner. So if you're going to be directed to a site that's going to take 3 seconds longer than another one to load, then clearly it makes perfect sense that they're going to favor the one that's fast loading, because that provides the better user experience for me coming on and doing my browsing, shopping, or whatever it is I'm up to.
So what are some of the reasons why your site wouldn't be performing? I don't mean yours in particular. I mean people's in general. Why people's sites aren't performing?
Yeah, so there can be a number of different aspects that come into performance, and it can get technical, and websites have got increasingly technical. So I'll try and steer away from any technicalities. But one of the obvious ones is things like pictures. We all want to include pictures on our blog posts and sort of pictures of our team, make it look like there's a friendly, welcoming website to visit. But if you take a picture that's come straight off a camera, and even off your phone, it could be between anywhere sort of 2 to 5 megabytes, just taking a normal picture on your phone. And if you upload that directly into your website, let's say you've got 4 pictures of your team. That could be 4 pictures that are 3 megabytes big. So that's 12 megabytes just in pictures before you've even done anything. So it's really important to think about scaling down your images so they're an appropriate size. Obviously, there's high resolution displays and you don't want them to be fuzzy these days. But generally speaking, even if you were just to reduce those images as a thumbnail shot to say perhaps 1,000 pixels, you are massively going to reduce the file size. And you'd probably go from somewhere between 2 to 5 megabytes to maybe a third of a megabyte. And that's a huge impact if you're going to have several pictures on the same page, which of course most websites do. We all want to have something that looks colorful, bright, and of course, pictures tell the story of 1,000 words, as we know. So if you're going to use photography to really showcase the content and the stories that you've got to share, then they really need to be well optimized. Otherwise, your page is just going to balloon in size, and all of those sorts of things take time to download. So that's one of the most obvious ones. But then there's things, a lot of sites now use web fonts, and that's fantastic. Back in the day when I started doing websites, you had a choice of literally, I think, Arial, Verdana, Georgia, and a couple of others. Now we've got this huge plethora of fonts that you can go and get for free from places like Google Fonts. But the more fonts you use, the more content it is to download. So just being a little bit more thoughtful about some of the fonts that you might use is also an important point. And then something that a lot of companies will have, we included, there's so much emphasis now on websites being able to attach to various different systems and services. So you might have your CRM attached to it. You might be collecting things like analytics. You might have your mailing platform attached to it. And you might be dropping in scripts called iframes that sit within the code there. Now, the more you do that, the more you're having to load content in from various different sources, and that inevitably will have a performance impact as well. So, there can be lots of these little scripts. Sumo is one that we've used before on e-commerce sites that provide these little pop-ups for perhaps to capture people email addresses or exit intent pop-ups, those sorts of things. They can be really effective, but if they're used in the wrong way, you can actually be adding extra bloat into your content, onto your page, and that ultimately all impacts on the performance.
So there's quite a few things you can do then in a fairly simple way to improve the performance of your website without being over technical, without having to rewrite any code or be an expert in WordPress or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, for a lot of companies that have WordPress sites, it can be as simple as just being a little bit more thoughtful about the plugins that you use. Your plugins they apply not just to WordPress, but they're a standard feature of the majority of websites and content management systems. But if you can really be selective about the plugins that you use, then you're less likely to introduce code bloat, as we would call it, that ultimately could impact on your performance. Now, some sites, particularly with WordPress, because there's a lot of templates that are used with WordPress sites, again, I would always advocate going for a paid template rather than a free template. The free templates can work well, and you don't have to pay a lot of money for a WordPress template, but you don't want to be in a situation where you've got all this extra code that has been loaded in on every single page when actually you might not be even using it. So just be a little bit more cautious perhaps in some of the plugins that you might choose, and only go for the ones that either have been tried and tested and are really widely used. So Yoast for SEO, for example. But it's interesting. I mean, even Google's own tools can have an impact on scoring performance. If you put in Google Analytics, that is going to have an impact on your ability to score highly as far as Google goes. And there's an irony there because it's Google's own tools, but like I say, you're introducing this script or this third-party piece of code that has to go away and run or do something somewhere else. So you want to try and minimize that as much as you possibly can. And that's without touching code. That's just been a little bit more selective over the code that you might introduce and really having good housekeeping practices, like anything else.
From your experience, what's the sort of, you must have seen the odd really bad site. And has that bad site been blatantly obvious why it's been bad? Does that make sense? It could be performing so badly because, oh my God, they've got this in, they've got that in. Is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, very often it is things like images. It can also be underperforming servers. So again, without trying to get too technical, if you've got shared servers or shared hosting, which a lot of particularly smaller companies will have, then their site it's using a server that's shared by potentially hundreds of other sites. And ultimately, that is going to impact on the server resource that's available to your own personal site. So there are things that you can look at. So a lot of the performance tools that even Google provide, they've got one called PageSpeed Insights. There's another one called Lighthouse, and there's one that we use called Pingdom, and they've got a free tools area, and it's just as simple as going in, putting your web address in there, and some of the tools will show a bit of a timeline, so you can actually see what it is that is taking the time to load. And it might show you that your page, let's say you've got a 5 megabyte page, it might say, well, 4 megabytes of that is pictures, third of a megabyte is styling, so your style sheet, which provides all the styling. And then the remainder might be JavaScript, for example, which provides a lot of the interactive behaviors on a page. So yes, there are tools which allow you to break that down, and then you can really sort of zoom in, I suppose, and home in on those areas that are likely to be causing the bottlenecks.
Are there any other tools that people can use to check the speeds or the performance?
So I think I'm a real advocate for Google's tools because we all want to rank in Google. We all want our site to appear there. So if Google are going to provide tools, then it makes sense to use those. So most sites should also be connected to a Google tool called Google Search Console. And that is something that allows you to see reports on which pages Google deem are performing well, which are performing poorly, and therefore that allows you to home in on those particular pages, because this is done on a page by page basis rather than your site. You can't just go and do a page speed test on your homepage and think, oh, that's okay, the homepage is scoring well. That doesn't necessarily mean that a product page could be scoring particularly well. So you do need to look at this on a page by page basis. And also I would suggest that people are a little bit selective. Which are the most high traffic pages? So often that might be a homepage. It might be a checkout section. It could be a product page. It could be a blog post. But identify which are your most high traffic areas and then run some page speed tests using Google PageSpeed Insights. Like I said, there's Pingdom tools, and then there's a tool called Lighthouse, which if you're using Google's Chrome browser, it's built into the browser. So you can do a right click and while you're on a web page, choose the inspect option, and then you've got Lighthouse, which is an option that sits across the bottom of your screen in Google Chrome. And that will do a test on mobile and desktop versions of your site, which in most cases, if you've got a responsive site, they will be the same. But of course, there are different performance parameters that will impact a mobile version of a site compared to a desktop. So those are really the places to start. And then you can at least identify whether you have got a potential performance problem. Then you can zoom in to see, right, well, where specifically do I need to really think about relieving a bottleneck, and what might that involve? And yes, this can get technical, so it might mean that you need to speak to your developer. It might be something that you can just resolve by removing a plugin. But these tests will highlight where the bottlenecks are and at least give you a starting point to investigate further.
So, I mean, there will be, like you're saying about the Google Search Console and the Google Analytics tools. They're kind of a necessary evil, aren't they? And they will slow you down a little bit, but I suppose you've got to grin and bear that and look at the things that you don't really need and get rid of those. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I think they are. Now, there's arguments around privacy with things like Google Analytics. There's also an argument around sustainability. You could say that Google Analytics is collecting so much data that the vast majority of companies will only look at a very small segment of it, and yet all of that data has to be stored somewhere. So there are other analytics platforms that are starting to appear. There's one called Fathom, which is very privacy focused, and it's really limited in terms of the data that it can give you. So it'll still tell you how many people are coming to the site, which pages are most popular, but it won't go down into the level of detail of which exact operating system they're using and which screen size they're using. That can be useful information, but it's probably more useful for a developer rather than your typical site owner. We all face information overload, and therefore we don't look at things that have got information overload because it's heavy going to actually decipher which bits are relevant to us. So yeah, there is certainly an element of irony in that adding Google's own tools can slow things down. But if you work with a developer, there are ways that you can actually still improve performance, even though you've got those things on the site, perhaps by a technique called lazy loading. You can actually defer Google Analytics or other tools, and they won't kick in until the rest of the page is loaded. So there are workarounds, but they do tend to get a little bit more technical.
Right. Sounds technical, right. Yeah. I mean, if people check their speeds and don't understand all this, can they get in touch with you? And what's the best way to do that, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. We work with a number of clients in terms of looking at things like page speed, and it's always one of the starting points. You want to benchmark your page speed every now and again, I would say, but before you ever sort of make large whole-scale changes to your website, because you really want to be sure that the changes you're making aren't taking you backwards. You've got to be making sure that if you're going to invest money in new features or functionality that appear on your site, you're not compromising on performance. So I'd always say take that benchmark, perhaps by using some of the tools that we've mentioned earlier. And really, most sites should have something like Google Search Console hooked up to the site, and that provides ongoing reporting. So, if pages suddenly disappear or there's suddenly an increase in pages that aren't found, you'll get a notification and you'll get an alert, and it does prompt you to do something. But yeah, if people are still struggling or want to have a little bit more of a deeper dive into why the site might be to be really struggling, then yeah, absolutely, more than happy to take a look. And they can get in touch with us through our website, which is over at adigital.agency.
Mm-hmm. Jolly good. And are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, to be honest, LinkedIn is probably the best place to look me up online. Spend quite a lot of time on LinkedIn. So if you just type a search in for Andrew Armitage, we're based in Kendal, just on the edge of the Lake District. So yeah, you should be able to find me quite easily on LinkedIn.
And we'll put all those links in the show notes, as well as the link to your book, which I've just started to read. So I'm looking forward to hopefully making some improvements to our website.
How long has the book been out, Andrew? How long have you?
The book came out in May, so it's not been out for too long. But it felt like it was a long time in the making.
I think these things are, aren't they? Yeah. When we've spoken to other people, they're like, "Oh, it's taken forever."
Yeah. Times, but yeah, at some point the hammer has to fall, doesn't it? And when you're constantly working on in digital or whatever specialist area that you work in, and if you're writing a book alongside it, you'll always find there's other things that you could include. Oh, I could just include that. Oh, this experience that I had today, that'd be really relevant in the book. But at some point, you just have to draw a line, and otherwise it will never, ever get
there. It'd be this thick.
Well, that's the thing with technology. It changes so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'll be out of date in 12 months' time.
You'd never get to do it, would you? Yeah,
no. And I guess that's only half the battle, isn't it? Once you've written the book and got it published, you've then got to promote it and sell it. Otherwise, it's...
no one knows about it.
Nobody knows.
Absolutely. And we have a separate website for the book, which covers a process which I created called Going the Distance, which I won't elaborate on. But if you go to gothedistance.website, then there's the option to download a free chapter and learn more about that process. And we've got a number of free resources that people can download as a PDF on there. You don't even have to give your email address. So that's gothedistance.website, and you'll find those.
Oh, wow,
lovely.
We'll check that out. Yeah, I'll look at that one. Yeah.
I think I already have. I just need to read the email that I got back.
You keep things from me, don't you? I've noticed you keep little secrets, don't you? I never find out about half of these things, Andrew. I mean, she appears to be a genius in my eyes. I'm thinking, where's she getting all this information from?
I don't think so.
Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, it's been. I've enjoyed that. It's been some good stuff there.
Yeah, really interesting stuff, and hopefully that'll help our listeners to help speed up
improve their
websites. Yes. I know when I messaged you in the first place, we asked if you had a networking tip. Didn't know whether I forgot to mention it at the beginning, and I thought I didn't mention it. So.
It's a shame, isn't it, that we've missed out on so much network, particularly the face-to-face networking over the last 18 months. But hopefully now we're in a position to start and get out again and meet face-to-face and really see the return of some of those great conversations that can happen around a table. But I think, from my point of view, the importance has got to be in the follow-up. It's great to go to these networking events and have those conversations. But it's not always the appropriate time to get into a particular level of detail. So I think making sure that for the people that you meet, there is that follow-up, because while now might not be the time, you never know. You never know who they speak to at their next networking event. And if there's a question that comes up, oh yeah, we're really struggling with such and such a thing. Oh, well, I met someone just the other day. And that's when networking can really happen. Yes, it happens in the room, but the power of it actually well after the meeting or well beyond the networking event that might have been taking place. So I would always recommend following up. It doesn't have to be a lengthy email, just a quick, nice to meet you, really interested to hear about such and such a project or the work that you've done with such and such a client, and then just a little bit of a call to action at the end that might be to perhaps direct people to your website, or if you've got some sort of referral scheme, some sort of free download, anything like that, just to mention that. And it just cements the relationship that might have started in the room. And ultimately, networking's a long game, isn't it? You don't need me to tell you that. And if you walk into a room and you make a sale, then that's probably quite unusual, and it's a real bonus. The real strength of that is keeping that relationship going, perhaps 6, 12, even 20 months, 18 months, 18 months to 2 years later. These things can come out of the woodwork, and you look back and think, oh yeah, well, I remember meeting that person. And if you've made that follow up, it's a hook for them as much as it is for you.
Yeah. Definitely. I think the secret to networking is the follow-up. That's the biggest. Well, it's not even a secret. It's common sense, but it's a lot. Surprised how many people don't have common sense. But it definitely is. They don't follow up, and they should do. Just collect business cards or whatever it is, and thank you. Great tip there. That's one of my favourites, is the follow-up. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being with us today. We've really enjoyed chatting to you, and like I say, we'll put all Andrew's details in the show notes. And you take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much, and good luck with the book. Hope it sells thousands.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate the invitation.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're almost at the end of this week's show, but before we go, we'd like to invite you to one of our in-business online networking events. The link for this will be in the show notes.
We've also got a book out there as well if you're interested in learning a little bit more about networking, called How to Improve Your Business Networking Skills, 52 Tips. Again, the link is in the show notes.
So thank you very much for joining us this week on In Business Talks 2 Friday Fix. We hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, all that we ask is that you simply tell a friend about the show. We'd really appreciate it.
Until next time, this is Ian and Tracy, and together
we are In Business. Goodbye.
Goodbye.